Robert Cooper.
He
Lovely to see
was,
you.
actually.
Yeah, it was.
The first embodiment of At the Races. Was that 20 years ago?
It was, yeah.
We've come a long way since then, haven't we?
Well, I mean,
but you've come a long way since then.
I mean, I'd like to think we both grown in our own ways.
How racing has evolved over the years is rather amazing, isn't it?
How much do you think it has evolved since
well, I was sort of involved in the first in SIS when that started. And you probably don't remember the old days when Exchange Telegraph, Extel, used to give those...
That is before my time.
You know, you used to get these sort of, extraordinary commentaries.
The favourite would always get a mention, and if there was a photo, if they said yours was... If they mentioned yours first,
they've gone past together.
20 on to win.
They mentioned about 8 horses they've gone past together. When you look at the result next day, the horse had won by 3.5 lengths. So it's, I mean, since the advent of At the Races, I mean, not SIS, it's changed immensely. Amazing. I mean, there used to be just 2 horse race meetings every afternoon, and 2 greyhounds, and that was it. So the volume of racing is absolutely enormous now, and just the way it's, the whole concept has changed completely, hasn't it?
I mean, the first time I remember hearing you was when I was at school on my radio listening to 5 Live, when he used to do
in the morning.
Live, yeah.
When Cornelius used to have a lion in his sort of silk dressing gown. And I used to get up early. I was thinking about that. That was fun.
You were the dep for Cornelius.
It was tense but fun.
But it was every morning as well.
We used to get hours.
Proper racing bulletin.
Well, BBC have completely, binned racing altogether, haven't they?
I mean,
virtually. Well, sort of.
Greater
by comparison.
Compared to then, yeah.
I remember doing a Saturday morning once, and John Ketley, weatherman, remember him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was a very keen racing man. He used to do a weather forecast on Saturday morning. And I'd done my sort of 5 minutes or something on a Saturday. It was an amazing amount of time. And then the producer asked me to stay on to have another racing chat with Ketley for another 10 minutes.
Unbelievable.
Which is, you'd never do that now.
Yeah, they were good days for sure. And then, of course, you suddenly find yourself on TV with the racing channel. And became a bit of a name quite quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that happened. That was because that was sort of in the same business as SIS. It was just sort of a branch of that. George Irvin, my old boss, remember George?
Very well, yeah.
He might be watching.
I hope so. If you are watching, George.
Hello, George.
One of the great legends on the...
Hello, George. Anyway, I mean, he dreamt up the, created is probably a better word, the racing channel. And that was fun because we did absolutely everything. We used to do point-to-points.
I can't remember that.
I remember going to Bitterley near Ludlow to do... And then we got... And Irish racing was completely a no-go area. We occasionally showed a little bit, and, maybe on a Sunday afternoon. But it's amazing, all the, the quality stuff we must have missed from Ireland. It was amazing.
Well, I think that's what people forget. In the last 20 years, people talk about Cheltenham and that sort of thing. Even when I started, nobody knew who any of these horses were in Ireland, and now, effectively, it's all part of the same product.
Yeah, I know. So we're spoilt. Don't you think we're spoilt as a punter?
Yeah, there's probably too much racing, really. But yeah, I mean...
someone said when SIS first started into the betting shops, I went round the corner to the local betting shop to get the reaction. I saw 2 old grumbling punters, and one said, the trouble nowadays, there's far too much racing on television. And it only just started, and there they were being, spoon-fed
already.
The pictures.
So all the complaints are still the same as they always have been, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, it's the same about everything, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Yeah, the weather.
So did you enjoy suddenly being... household names pushing it.
No.
Did you enjoy having that little bit of notoriety going, because you were now into people's homes?
Didn't really bother me. I never really thought of it like that. I've always just had a bit of fun, really. But I remember my dad, when he was alive, he used to watch, and he was quite sort of a proud viewer. So I used to get a bit of feedback from him. A little bit. But I remember once when I used to always go to the July meeting at Newmarket with him. And then he was rather sort of mystified because I kept on being stopped by someone because I'd had a day at Warwick. It was a thunderstorm, and I had an umbrella, but we were in the parade ring, and I was told to put the umbrella down because it would scare the horses. So I got completely and utterly drenched. Looked like a drowned rat, which I carried on doing for the next 20 years. But anyway,
you made an art form out of that, though.
Absolutely. And when I was at Newmarket, people kept on coming up and sort of noticing and mentioning my drowned rat act, saying, you know, I know what it's like. He said, I'm a postman, one chap said. No, it was quite fun. It was much. I mean, they were probably amateur days. I would hate to see, well, I would quite like to see replays of that, but it was very different than it was now.
But also, you had the...
Did you ever watch the Racing Channel?
Yeah, absolutely.
You did.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't have had the aspiration to turn up somewhere like this had I not watched the Racing Channel in the first place. It was you, Kat, Alex Hammond.
Yeah, Alex was very much...
Miriam Frankham was very much one of the early
Even it was pre-Chapman, really.
It was pre-Chapman, yeah.
He was sent for a trial run to report from Southall, and I think George thought he was so awful, they think, no, not for a while. And now the monster has been let loose.
I mean, you created your own thing as well by almost being kind of, I'm not saying the anti, but the negative, if you like. You would just do what you wanted to do, and it worked.
I think it's just, I mean, I just quite enjoy the process of what we do, and obviously being a mad keen racing fan as well. And I just thought it was, I don't know how it happened really, because I remember when I first did some studio work, because on SIS they used to have studio presenters. Ian Carnaby used to do a bit, and Richard Pittman, and both of them were unavailable. I think they were both at the Grand National Weights. So Muggins was drafted in. I remember being absolutely petrified when the cameras, I could hardly function at all. But then suddenly, like in all these things, you sort of find your voice, don't you? And I seem to have found... Well, I found some sort of voice anyway.
I always feel your style is like, it reminds me somewhat of like test match special kind of way of doing racing.
And I've always, I'm mad keen.
By the way, I mean that as a great compliment.
No, I love test match. I mean, cricket is probably my equal first love anyway. So
do you think that you? I mean, generally, I think people, it's hard to cover up your personality, isn't it? If you're on TV like as many times as you've been on TV, it's bound to come. You can't kind of fake it. It's just it's you. I'm imagining.
Well, you can, I mean, I think I was quite lucky, but it actually came across as me rather than what I thought what a presenter ought to be like. I remember listening to, I used to think Julian Wilson was quite good. When I did my audition tape for Mecca Bookmakers, my first employers, and I did it rather in sort of a style of Julian Wilson. They played out my tape to see what it sounded like in the betting shops. And it sounded like the king abdicating. Edward VIII. It was ridiculous. I was so embarrassed. It was awful. So you do, you sort of adapt, don't you?
He sent me a letter once, Julian Wilson.
I thought it was the old king.
Yeah. Both. Well, he used to have horses with Lady Herries. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And he had a horse running in a 2-mile handicap at York, and he was a nice horse, but he didn't try very hard. I'm not talking intentionally because he could do that as well, but the horse hadn't tried very hard, and I said, "Oh, look at that old Twicer or whatever." Richard Hughes came in and called him all sorts of names.
Yeah.
And so Julian wrote me this letter, and it said, the bit I remember about it the most was, "I have huge regard for Hughes as a jockey. Hence why I continue to use him. But he has this propensity to talk the most unutterable balls when he dismounts." That's what I can remember from my letter from Julian Wilson.
He was in our first embodiment of At the Races.
Yeah.
He was a guest now and again.
He was, yeah, absolutely.
I remember working with him at the July meeting.
Because he was quite friendly with Jim Ramsey, our then boss.
He was.
If you remember.
I remember he sent Zoe Bird, who's still working hard. She came along just to say hello, and he sent her off to have a bet for him.
And it probably wasn't a fiver either, was it?
It was a lot. No?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was
Zoe's
quite a
face
punter.
when he said, "Could you just get 5 large each way on foot?"
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think he said he mentioned sort of how much makeup she should use. He was quite a strange. Well, he was a character, wasn't he?
So, do you think it's given you a greater appreciation doing what you've been doing because it wasn't like your first choice career, because you weren't sort of like thrusting at it?
No, I never thought of it, because I never thought you could combine. I was sort of brought up in the day when you didn't make to work at your hobby would be unthinkable. So I did jobs far, far away from racing before.
Did you enjoy any of them?
The stock exchange was quite fun, because I used to pop across to the betting shop the whole time, and there was a lot of betting.
And you are a punter at heart, aren't you?
I think without betting, it would be. I wouldn't like it at all. Would you be still involved if it was no betting?
No, definitely not.
No. I mean, I'm not saying all horses look the same because some look magnificent, but I mean, I'm much. I know the obvious things, but I don't know. You lot all talk about the breeding and stuff like that. I would never feel qualified to do that.
But you love to bet. You love the stock exchange, but you love racing more.
Well, the stock exchange didn't love me because they made me redundant. And when I went to work I worked as an assistant underwriter for a year. That was desperate. Locked away in a room with this quite dull man.
But that would have been around about the time of the Lloyd's crash, wouldn't it?
Maybe I caused that. Maybe that was it. And when I worked for an employment agency who employed accountants, I was never...
Oh, that doesn't sound so much fun.
Well, I used to pretend I was Michael Parkinson, so I used to interview them in rather a sort of a jaunty way. So how was your audit in Coventry? Tell us about that.
Oh, my word.
But anyway, it's all over now.
Was that a difficult decision or not?
No, I used to think... I did think, building up to it, how on earth do you know? But you sort of, in the end, I've done it for long enough. And I'd had 2 really nice days at Brighton. Brighton's a nice place to report from. But then the drive home, when I was sitting on the M25 for, an hour or so, I thought, maybe it's time to call it a day. And I was going to go, next March was going to be my sort of deadline.
Yeah.
But I suddenly thought, well, there's a bit of a summer left. Why not make it the end of July?
Yeah.
So that was it.
The farewell tour was pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah.
Rival Frankie Dettori.
ending a great Yarmouth. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. But to be fair to Yarmouth, they gave me such a fantastic send-off.
You milked that better than a Derry Crest Frisian. It was tremendous. Yeah. Every racecourse.
I know. I got a bottle from every racecourse. I should have packed up years ago.
I was half expecting you to end up, commentating in California now, having, decided to make a comeback but too embarrassed to do so.
Like Frankie, that'd be quite fun, wouldn't it? That's an idea. I wouldn't want to be my first thing in racing, I quite wanted to be a commentator. Did you want to commentate?
Not really. And the other thing is that I remember when I first started, people would say, do you fancy having a crack at it? Well, of course, everyone kind of fancies having a crack at everything, don't they? But they were also good. You're like, well, you're never going to get a look at it. I
did 3 days commentary.
Did you?
Well, there used to be a world shortage of commentators on Easter Monday.
And that was when there were about 18 meetings.
Yeah, and Ian Barty put me in for a few. I did Toaster, which was fantastic because it was abandoned. And I got paid, which was no work at all. I did a Huntingdon, which was quite fun. It went OK. And I did a Hereford. Only person ever to mention the sports centre down the far side as they go past the sports centre.
The picturesque leisure centre.
But I wouldn't want to do it. I think the big test is, I think you can. And once Tomo didn't turn up at Leicester.
Do you know what? How come?
Well, I think he'd gone shopping or something.
You've had another gig on.
He probably closing a betting shop, rivalling Desert Orchid.
We did
and I had to do 3 races.
Festival preview at, I want to say Birmingham City Football Club.
Well, say it.
A few years ago. And Tomo he won't mind me telling this story because I've ribbed him about it ever since.
Is he a viewer? He will be, won't he?
I hope so.
Morning, Tomo.
And he was supposed to be hosting this, and it got to about 6 o'clock, and the thing was supposed to start at 6:30. And they're like, oh, anyone know? And it was all quite a big audience in, and Tomo was the perfect person to, gee an audience like that up. And somebody called him up and he said, yeah, just finished commentating on the last at Catterick. He'd done the commentating gig at Catterick till 5:50 with a 6:30 start in Birmingham. Now, even the great
Batman couldn't do that.
I'm not even sure a chopper could have sorted that.
He's amazing, though. I think he's a character. There are fewer characters around, but Tomo still remains a great character
and works ridiculously hard.
Who's going to get there?
And is showing no signs of stopping. Are you someone who can quite happily switch off a little bit now and just and doodle about?
I find switching off no problem at all. But I've got other interests. I like going to concerts and watching cricket, and I'm a keen reader, and I do a bit of writing now and again. So, quite a lot of things to occupy me. I've got a greenhouse now.
Are you a good gardener?
I'm not a good gardener. My wife's a good gardener, but I've been doing propagation. It's rather like breeding horses, but it's much cheaper, taking cuttings. But I feel really proud when they actually take and go. You're not a gardener, are you?
Not a gardener, no, definitely.
Have you got a lawn?
No, don't have a house actually. So
you live
digital
here?
nomad. Digital nomad.
There have been people who, in various studios we've worked in, have been found to be.
Well, I could see there's a sleeping bag
living
just behind
them, but Neil's not one of them. You're in York now, aren't you?
No, we left there.
Oh, you've gone from York?
We'll be in Devon next week.
That didn't last long.
No, it was a couple of months. It was very nice, actually. Yeah.
So actually, just for those who don't know, all the places you've lived on this nomadic tour, where you've had no fixed abode.
Yeah.
Hopefully the
York was well up there, actually. It was very nice. I went to lots of new racecourses, actually.
So you've lived in Brighton.
Yeah.
You've lived in Bath.
Yeah.
You've lived in Alderney.
Bristol.
Alderney briefly.
Oh, good places.
Alderney,
That's what you were doing there.
York.
So where's next?
Devon. A couple of months in Devon, and we've got to pop to Brighton for
On
something.
the moors there, or?
North Devon, near to Ilfracombe.
Yeah, that'd be quite nice.
Yeah, very, very nice, very nice. Looking forward to that. No, it's been good. It's been good. I did actually go to quite a few racecourses that I hadn't been to when we were in York. I most recently Hexham. I thought
It's great,
never
isn't it?
beautiful.
Was the weather good?
It was kind of. It wasn't quite as. It was a bit blustery by the end of the afternoon.
I think it's one of the most spectacular, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've never been there.
Oh, it's fabulous.
Awful, isn't it?
Yeah,
I've never been to
that's
Hexham.
quite
Oh, well,
mad.
There's still about 5 I haven't done.
I haven't done any in Scotland.
Really?
all great.
What, are you going to do that now? Now you're semi-retired?
I might do. It's a long way, though, isn't it?
Well,
It's further when you're not
A little
working.
circuit.
Yeah, I think I will do the
Seriously,
circuit.
they did those racecourse awards, the nominations. They do the RCA awards.
Yeah.
And there was a Scottish racecourse in every single category for finalists, and especially the owner service, customer service,
Oh, you've got to go.
experience. They massively punch above their weight.
Everyone
Massively
says,
punch
when I
above
say I
their
haven't
weight.
been racing in Scotland, everyone says, oh, you've got to go. Kelso's fantastic, Perth's
all are.
fantastic.
How many in England have you not done?
I've done all in England.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just got to tick off.
God,
this.
Hadrian built the wall for you, didn't he, Robert?
Hadrian, he did, yeah. Well, it was under construction when I first arrived.
Let me ask you another question, because I see people always moaning. Well, people like to look back, don't they? People always, think that the grass was always greener and all that kind of stuff.
These are the good old days.
Yeah, the good old days. Yeah, exactly. So people quite often say, Channel 4, when it was old Nick Luck.
And they don't say. They definitely don't say that.
John McCruick. People always
a
talk
bit more
about
like
that
it.
sort of era, and Johnny Frankham and all that.
Yeah.
It was better. Do you think? What do you think is going well about the way racing is covered on TV, and what could they do better? And what would
I
you
think
like to
now is
change?
always the time. I think you can look back, and you always look back with rose-tinted glasses, don't you? I think, and I think television is. I mean, racing is very well served by 2 dedicated channels, ITV doing a great job, a dedicated newspaper every day. It's unbelievable, really,
There's an awful lot.
considering a sporting crisis as we hear.
No, you're right. You're definitely right.
I think it's good.
Yeah.
And it was fun. I mean, if you look back to I used to quite like the old BBC days with Jimmy Lindley and Peter O'Sullivan and Clive Graham. I remember he was a long time ago, pre-Julian Wilson. Used to think that was best. But if you watch that now, it would look awful. It would look so slow.
Yeah, and actually, similarly, some of the stuff that used to be on, say, Channel 4 morning lines in the 90s, they get replayed on Twitter now. God, you could never broadcast that now.
No.
But do you think that, like, the sort of conversational style and the sort of more relaxed is better, or the kind of cut from one to the other and we're going over
Doesn't
here?
it depend on what you're covering and when?
Yeah, I think now is the time, really. I think because if you think of your favourite old comedy programmes and you look back at a replay on YouTube or on one of the millions of channels, you think how slow it is. Everything's so slow. Everything's much faster now, and I think you've just got to go with the pace, really. I think everything is good now, really. In that respect,
where did you enjoy yourself the most? What's been the most sort of satisfying bit of all this? Either a place or a time, or
I think the Racing Channel was great because it was all brand new, and we were just having fun, and we didn't really sort of think I never really thought, I didn't know how many people were watching, but I suppose quite a few were watching. And people used to, you know, they're used to, whether they paid for it or not, I think we used to put a coat hangers to get the picture or something. I think those were very good days, because when it changed to the first at the races, which was pretty chaotic, really. You know, the actual business plan was a complete no-go area, so you knew that was doomed.
It was quite an interesting place to work.
So I think it's got, I think in a way it's got sort of less enjoyable as time has gone on. It's sort of different, mainly because it was so sort of new and exciting when I first started doing it. So, you know.
But if you were in at the beginning of anything, isn't it? It's like if you were at the beginning, at the beginning.
Well, you think you're at the beginning. You know, we're not really at the beginning, because the beginning was, you know, I'm sure Peter O'Sullivan thought he was at the beginning, and Peter Bromley and great sort of legends like that. So it all depends now. Someone coming in now to this channel or any of the channels now thinks, well, these, you know, this is the exciting time. So I think we've got to, you know, look ahead. I mean, how will racing be covered in 10?
Well, I don't know. I mean, when you look at, say, cricket, the way that, you know, when it came on terrestrial and Channel 4 started covering it, I thought that was quite revolutionary. They went a bit more
when they took it from the BBC.
But no, I mean, cricket is incredibly well covered now, isn't it? I don't think it could be any better. I think in some ways it's more complete than racing is, but racing's a much more sort of, you know, higgledy-piggledy sport, really, isn't it? Because there are so many sort of aspects to it.
But now, when we spend a lot of time in racing now, talk about like stride patterns and sectional timing and stuff like that.
Does that help you at all?
Well, I mean, it must be. All good information is good. But when you look at American racing and you know, in the picture of the race, you've got which horse is in front and it keeps bobbing about and, you know, that kind of thing.
I quite like that.
Yeah, I quite like that. But I don't know. Are we still a bit stuck in the past, or do you think we're making the transition?
Well, Nick will know that, because you're very much involved in America. I think, can we learn much from
technologically we've stalled a little bit.
Can we learn from the way racing is covered in America? I think we stalled a little bit technologically here. I think, you know, but again, it's all money. We need more investment in more cameras, more, you know. And it's expensive,
more things that make people watch and go, oh, you know.
Yeah.
But then to an extent, I could watch, you know, I quite like when I've got the racing on at home. I'm sitting there in the afternoon.
Make this a quick one, because
well, I'll make it quick.
I'm about to
we've only
pull
got
us off
20
the air.
seconds.
Oh, we are?
Right, well, I'll quickly say, I used to like it if you were kind of just chatting away and I felt like I'm sitting watching a conversation. That's what I used to like.
I like that too.
Good. I'm glad that answer was short. You see, a television pro to the very end. Robert,
but what I will
Cooper.
say is... No, I'm only joking.
We'll see you next week.